we'll open the Board of Selectmen meeting as part of, which is part of the finance committee, part of the wage and personnel now. And then the finance committee will open your meeting.
Yep, I move to open the finance committee meeting for purposes of discussion, wage and personnel.
Okay. So I always just take over because that's my nature, but if you guys want to be, you're welcome to do it.
Sure.
I'm not sure how you want to handle this now. Do we want to just go down this list and talk about them? Anybody got any things they want to bring up first?
Well, do we want to share the news first, I guess, with the grant and everything?
So we did get a grant to conduct a compensation and classification study. So we were awarded $50,000, which is the maximum from the state. John actually just signed the grant contract, so I'll get that submitted tomorrow. We'll get the money in, and then we can work to procure a consultant to do these. I mean, there's a few of them out there, so we'll prepare an RFP, put it out to bid, and then evaluate the best consultant. You know, these things take time. You want them to take time because you want it done right. You want it to be detailed, but obviously it's very important, and I think it really goes with you know, the bigger picture here of everything needs to be looked at, from positions, job descriptions, the wage scale, and that's what this study will do. So
That won't be done before this.
No.
So,
Right.
It's gonna take a while.
Yeah, well, yeah, and you want to do it the right way, so, you know, it's going to take some time, but yeah, so that's just something to consider, I guess, as far as making some determinations, I guess, here, right, like what we want to maybe postpone and have conducted as part of that process, or what we want to get into this year, you know, so.
well, it's good, yeah, I mean, we could do that. If we think we might do something more. Like, what are you talking about, like some of the changes like this?
Well, yeah, I think we just need to be careful, right, of what kind of some of the things we push through now, because we don't want to cause larger problems, I guess, right, when we look at it holistically through that, you know, analysis. So I think there's definitely some things we can and should push through for this year, but just something to consider, I think, as we kind of go through them, is this like a, you know, must-have for this year, or, you know, a should-have, or that kind of thing. Just when we go to evaluate, I guess, like what we want to push through or recommend to push through.
Right. Well, so all we end up doing anyway is making a recommendation.
Exactly.
So it's up to town meeting to do whatever they
Right.
want to do. So
Yeah.
if the department head wants to press their case, they certainly can.
Right.
So, okay. So how do you want to, like, how do you want to address, how do you want to approach what we have to do here? Any thoughts about that, or just go down the list? Or?
I mean, do you guys have any thoughts? Or? I mean, maybe just down the list. I don't know the best.
There's dollars we're talking about for some things, correct?
Yeah.
That fire department was in looking to get another EMT or something of that nature on.
No, the fire department wanted to, change the rates on paramedics. And then they wanted to change their administrative assistant from grade 6 to a grade 8. I think that's.
So in the budget, they did request additional firefighters, but that would be more of a finance committee operating budget review, because that position already exists. They're just looking to add. So that's a budgetary matter, not necessarily a wage and personnel
And
matter.
that included that on-call guy who was looking for to fill in the odd shifts or something. That would be part of that. Okay.
That's just an additional body.
Yes, that was changing.
So we're not changing the wage and personnel, that's just adding to staff.
Right, okay.
So we wouldn't, you guys deal with that, we don't deal with that today.
Yeah, I think the call medic, I think he called it.
Yes.
Yeah.
And Jonathan did pull some notes on that. He's on vacation, but I do have his notes here. I'm just trying to pull them up.
That's a broken computer.
Well, I think, I mean, while he's doing that, I think, I mean, if you take the low-hanging fruit, permanent intermittent officer on the police, they want to remove it. I think we should recommend that because that's a civil service position and we're not civil service anymore. So I don't see any reason why that should even be in the bylaw.
Agree, yeah.
On the lieutenant, I talked to the chief and also to Cody about that. We already have that position in the bylaw. Basically what the chief's proposal was to flesh out the job description. So we could, what we were talked about doing is having Cody and the chief look at some surrounding towns and see what those positions, like the job description and how it all works. If you look at his proposal, he talked about tying like the salary into the highest sergeant's pay, which I don't think is a good idea.
No.
We shouldn't be doing that.
Correct.
And then all the benefits should be the same as the police officers. Again, we shouldn't be doing that. I don't think we should have a separate, it's a separate position, it ought to be a separate position. But as far as the details of that, I mean, we already have the position. All we're doing now is fleshing out exactly what it should say. So I think we can hold off on that until Cody and the chief can take a little look around and see what should be done in terms of that. I think it's probably a good exercise for the police department because it'll give them a reason to just think through how he wants to use that position. It's not filled. They never get filled. I don't know. It might be a kind of deal with him at some point, but at least we ought to have a good thought about what he wants to do with it.
Yeah.
And then on the records clerk, that was wanted to create. Would that be a wage and personnel thing, or is that just like it'd be a secretary that would start at a certain level?
Well, if you're creating a new position of records clerk, then it would be wage and personnel.
Yeah.
If they were just looking to hire a secretary, which is an existing position,
Yeah.
then it would just be a budgetary matter. He would just need to request the funding in his operating budget.
So I think at this point, considering that we are going to spend $50,000 on a study, that we try to stay away from creating any extra positions that we don't have to.
So, yeah, that was my thought.
If he wants a records clerk and he wants to hire them at level 4 or level 6 or whatever, that he'd come to you with the finance committee anyway to talk about that. So I think that's my view on it anyway. And then the other part of it that was the two, well, now I'm talking about the fire department, administrative assistant, which is another discussion that you just brought up about, changing grades and all. So that might not.
Yeah, that's where I think we just need to be really careful, yeah, because we might, shoot ourselves in the foot, if you will, cause a larger problem with that, and then only have to unwind stuff or,
Dig out of the hole.
Yeah, exactly.
So do you want to consider any grade changes here or
I mean, we could look at them on a case-by-case basis, I guess, but,
What do you?
I think it'd be more prudent to,
Not to interrupt. What do we think the timeline would be on? Say, obviously, it's going to take us X amount once we figure out who we're going to have.
6
come
months
in,
probably.
and then 6 months to get someone, and then
No, 6 months to,
start to finish.
yeah.
So inside the calendar year, the
Yeah.
current calendar year.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean,
but it wouldn't be until next town meeting, I guess, that,
Right.
yeah.
which wouldn't be bad.
That'd be-
would be next time? Not this spring, but next spring.
Yeah, correct, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the problem is a lot of these issues have lingered, right, for a very long time, but, so we want to get things done, which is, great, but
But
we
when
don't
you
want to
say-
rush it, so to just wait a little longer, make sure we do it the right way, I think is the right way to go. I mean, probably not the news that everybody wants to hear, right? People want things solved immediately. They've been waiting for quite some time, but
Yep.
at least we're making, moving in the right direction and
But,
have a good, proper plan in place, I guess, for some of these.
but like you said, you don't want to shoot yourself in the foot and dig
We might
yourself
just
down
cause a
a
bigger
hole when
problem,
we
yeah.
can't we
Right.
can't come out of that.
Exactly, yeah, and that's where we have to be careful.
If we have someone that's gonna do it, you know, for the grant that we have, and do it correctly.
Yeah, and there may be ways to help to mitigate concerns as far as it not being done this town meeting. We may be able to look at different options for some retro options, things like that. I don't want to commit to anything because I need to look more into it, but there may be some opportunity where if we make changes, you know, we could try to make part of it, you know, retroactive. Because if you're not looking to make changes now, I see both point of view. The employee, you know, that there's an issue, they want to see things done. But from our point of view, we want to do things the right way. So it's going to take time. So we may be able to work to, once we have a solution, we try to make it somewhat retroactive to an extent.
Yeah, I guess we just need to be careful with how we message that, so we don't overpromise, I guess, because
No, we're not promising anything.
Yeah.
We're going to look into it.
Right.
So almost all of these are requests to change and grade. Right? Although I would skip down to the call medic one. I personally think that we should do that.
I
think
totally agree.
$21 for medic, when the minimum wage is $15, is crazy. Just, you know, paramedics,
They go to school for a long
pretty
time.
advanced education, so.
And Jonathan, who he was assigned that, agreed that it should be, that we should increase it to 26. And that he feels it's a good start and a minimal expense, given what the alternative could be, life or death situations.
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, just the education. An EMT you can do in like 3 months, paramedics in a year and a half.
Yeah.
So they do everything short of field surgery usually.
Yep.
So $26 for that, I think, to me, getting them to do that, that's a good deal. Anybody have any other thoughts about any of the other proposed changes or anything like that?
I mean, the call medic was the number one item that I had. You know, I did look into the assistant to the administrator. What I found is a lot of towns are, and some of you probably already know this, but a lot of the towns are, you know, run a assistant town administrator, and that position actually functions as a HR person as well, which I know we talked about that a little bit last meeting, and there's definitely, I think, a need to have a person on site that's able to manage the trainings and, you know, onboard new people and all that kind of stuff. So having that person in, I think, is probably a great idea. But again, I think we need to defer to that study that that we're going to kick off. So see what they come back as far as a recommendation there. But I think that's probably the, you know, kind of killing two birds with one stone, if you will, there by having that assistant that can help, you know, Cody manage the duties, but then also serve as that HR person.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that position was lumped in with the assistants for like the town clerk and treasurer collector, assessor.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it was put in as assistant to
Yeah.
the administrator, not assistant administrator, so there's a difference there, but I think maybe we want to pursue that other alternative to somewhat upgrade that role in that sense, I guess, if you will, and have that person function as both.
Right.
Was kind of my thoughts, maybe is, you know, more efficient and better, bigger bang for our buck, if you will. But I think that's something we can put at the forefront maybe of that, maybe we, and I don't know how we go about setting that up, but we can communicate to them, I guess, that that's maybe one of the priorities we want them to kind of look at and see. Like, I think Darlene had brought up the last meeting, which was a great idea, you know, maybe looking at a third party, but I think there's some downsides in that. You know, you don't have somebody on site, and then it's like somebody's assigned to you, and, you know, maybe they, you know, leave, and then you get a brand new person and that's not familiar with the town, and, you know what I mean? There's a lot of downside to that, I think, too, so having somebody on site, I think, is very valuable.
So do you think the review that we're just about to start would get into the detail like that of exactly what this position, we're going to pick any one, like exactly what this position does and where it should fit in with the scale, that's what they do?
Yep, that's exactly what they'll do. And they'll also look at making recommendations to position changes. So for instance, the administrative assistants to the chiefs, they're going to look at those most likely and say, if these aren't administrative assistants, these are executive assistants. So, they're not necessarily, an administrative assistant may not necessarily be underpaid, but that's not really the position. So they would recommend a position change, change of title, and then part of it would be re-ask them to present us with job descriptions. So that would be part of their task as well. Update our current job descriptions, then any new proposed positions that they recommend to provide job descriptions to us.
That sounds like a pretty involved thing.
It is.
And is $50,000 enough to do that?
Yeah. These companies that do it, they have a template that they utilize, and they come in and they'll fit it to us, but they have so much of the information already. And there's a few of them that they just work with Massachusetts municipalities, so a lot of the data and information they already have pulled together.
So then what's this collective group want to do? You don't want to address any of them? So far, Mike, I'm just keeping a note here, so I know what we're talking about. So far-
Yeah, I think the problem is like Cody outlined is, I don't know that we have people in the right buckets, if you will, under the right titles, so to say, okay, this person's, should go up a step, like, is that position an executive assistant versus administrative? Like, I don't think their duties are necessarily aligned with the job description, so I think that's part of the disconnect that we have to start off with. So I think getting that aligned properly is step one, and then step two is then, okay, what are the wages associated with those, and, you know what I mean? So
Where do
there's
the
a couple
grant steps
layers
fall
to-
on?
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
Well, we wouldn't do, so basically you would defer on all of them.
Well, I think like the medic one, I think makes sense, right? And that's a clear, but some of the other ones get a little muddy because you have multiple people in the same role, but their job duties and tasks are totally different across the board. So you're not really comparing, people.
And then most of the other ones are just regrades and
That's
job
what-
descriptions.
That's my concern.
Well, the only job description one was the police lieutenant. That's the only one that had to write an actual job description. Everything else was like grading.
No, COA did regrade and update job description.
Oh, yeah, COA.
did too.
Yeah, no, it's not. That's right. No, they don't
I will note, there's some requests in here, for instance, the regulatory boards, where it's currently a secretary, and they're looking to go from a 4 to a 6. We have an existing administrative assistant position, so that wouldn't be a bylaw change necessarily. It could just be a budgetary request, that instead of hiring a secretary, we hire an administrative assistant. So things like that can be taken care of quite easily, actually. It's just a budget request, not, it wouldn't have to be a wage and personnel request. If the position already exists within the town, it doesn't need to be changed in the bylaw because it already exists. So that's just one example of.
Well, on the regulatory ones, they want to go from 4 to 6. They call them a secretary, move them from 4 to 6, but they could
So-
promote them to a
so-
different position.
Yeah, so right now, a secretary 2 is a grade 4 in our bylaw.
Yeah.
And that's what these positions are hired as. We have an administrative assistant position, which is a grade 6. So we could, and our positions aren't specific to, it doesn't say administrative assistant, building department.
Yeah.
The bylaw just says administrative assistant. So we could hire administrative assistants in these roles as long as the budget reflects it, as long as we have the funding in the budget.
How about the current people that are in those roles?
We don't have anybody in those roles.
Oh, they all quit, that's right.
Hit the nail on the head on that. Any more like that?
if there were somebody in those roles, you know, and it were a collective decision and approved, you know, by the finance committee and then ultimately town meeting, we would just promote the individual to a grade, to an administrative assistant instead of a secretary.
Does that handle though, like, well,
So we're trying to stay away from talking about anything that most likely is gonna be looked at through this company, if we will. Which is everything on this list.
Right,
It's just pretty much.
I mean,
which is all of them.
And you have some that.
I mean, obviously the fire one, I get.
The library stipend one, that's not something, you know, a study would look at. A study isn't going to recommend stipends for employees, they're gonna recommend a whole package salary. You know, these are the job requirements that you need to have, and this is what you should be compensated with. So they wouldn't necessarily look at stipends, so, you know, it's something you could evaluate.
Who had stipends?
Well, would we want to give somebody a stipend now and then have the consultant come in and make it a whole package thing, but we're still giving them a stipend? So would
Well,
we
'cause
really
isn't that-
want to do that, or should we, I would think we should wait
Yeah.
and see how that, you know, progresses and then decide what to do.
Yeah, because I think we need to look at the grade of the job, right? Like, does the job require the degree already,
Yes,
right?
Yes.
yeah,
Or if it doesn't, like, should it, right? And then,
Right.
so we maybe solve them that way versus having to do stipend on the back end? Because like, is it truly an additive?
If we did a stipend, then that would automatically be probably part of whatever the new compensation package would be, right? I mean, we'd have to take it away from them, I would think. It'd probably be better to wait on it and see.
Exactly, that's what I'm
Yes,
thinking, right?
yes.
Yeah. Because if the job requires a bachelor's degree, like, why give a stipend right on top of it? Doesn't make sense. So I think that's where we just gotta look at the grade and see, do we have it, you know, is the job description set up properly and,
Right.
you know.
There was also the health agent request to change from 1-year appointment to a 3-year appointment. That would be a study wouldn't evaluate that.
That's a wage and personnel issue?
I think is it in the bylaw? I think it is in the personnel bylaw, yeah. I mean, just,
Who had that one? Did we find out if that was, like, what's the standard, I guess, there? Is 1 year typical or?
no, you typically don't see 1 year for any municipal employees.
So 3
because- Yeah, nobody wants to take the job because nobody wants uncertainty of
Yeah,
having the job.
exactly,
1 year.
yeah.
So I mean,
So, I mean, I think that, I mean, it sounds like a, one that we should probably do then, right? I mean,
You may want to look at, I think there's several that are annual appointments. Is that true, Sandy?
I don't know about the paid personnel. I don't
Okay.
know if it's got any other annual. I didn't even realize the health insurance was annual.
Okay. We can look at that.
I don't understand why the health agent is even an appointment. Why wouldn't the health agent be an at-will employee like everybody else? Health inspector, grade 10, grade 11. Like, you know, I know we do some of the building inspectors and all are appointed. It really doesn't make any sense, does it? Like, why wouldn't you rather have, like, any other hire, unless they're on a contract where you would set the term? But anybody else you would hire them like
Right.
an at-will employee, right? Like, just as if you were hiring anybody, right? So why are we doing, what, is this just some?
We can look at it. Yeah, we can look to clean it up, but I mean, I would recommend exactly that all of your positions are employees, at-will employees.
I think so.
And,
Yeah, I mean,
you know, other
unless
than the chiefs, the town administrator, those are all contracted positions.
I mean, the building inspector assistants and all, actually, the veterans agent would point, but he's an employee too, right? But again, there's no reason why they should be on the term. They should just be, you know, if they don't want to stay for 3 years, they leave anyway. If we don't want them after a year, then, you know, we can make that change. So I think, I would recommend that, yeah, we should just hold off on any of that and say, look, there's got to be some better reason for annual appointments.
Yeah.
Some of the other things, volunteer stuff, or the conservation, I mean, that's a different matter altogether. But yeah, like we don't appoint a fireman on an annual basis, or every, you get a 3-year term or something like that. That's just not how it works. So why are we doing that for the health inspector, the building inspector, or conservation agent, or any of these positions? It doesn't make any sense. I never thought about it before.
Grade 6 to grade 7.
So, for those would be.
No, 2 to 4. Or is that 2 to 4 staff?
Which one's this?
Yeah, that was
Oh, yeah.
2 to 4.
4 to 6.
So yeah, I mean, I think that probably should be our recommendation, I guess, right? Just to move those two at will, which is more logical approach, right? But then,
regular employee.
yeah.
Because I mean, they are. I guess if you go back far enough, the health inspector was probably more of a volunteer or, pay per instance type of a person, but
Right.
now they work for us on a regular basis. So. Okay, so where does everybody think we are?
So, and then, there's also a across-the-board increase, which we're currently bargaining with our unions, so we can't discuss, what we're thinking at this point.
Sure.
We're hopeful to get that done prior to town meeting. We're gonna start moving quickly. So, but that will be something, to consider too, is, you're not saying you're not gonna do anything this year. There's definitely, I think, a commitment made by you all that, to give some sort of across-the-board increase. So,
Definitely.
and that's important to let everyone know too.
Which may help these anyways. So,
So that would be a wage and personnel recommendation of an across-the-board increase of whatever percentage.
I believe so. I believe that's how it's been.
Is there funding available for that?
We do, yeah. We do have funding available.
We did talk about that in our first joint sessions, I think.
We did, yeah.
Yeah. All right, so again, where do we think we are?
So what was the takeaway with the lieutenant? So you're working with the police chief just to kind of work on that language, I guess, or?
Yeah, I'll work with them. We'll look at,
Okay.
how the position should be set up, job description, benefits, so on and so forth.
Yeah, okay, perfect. And then we agreed on the medic, right? So that kind of brings us down to the,
And eliminating the permanent intermittent officer, just eliminating it for the bylaw, it doesn't exist any longer.
right. So the next block of row, the grade changes, right? And then,
we got 2 money ones that I had. If we want to talk about those.
Sure.
So we had the COA nurse to 1945 to 25. Unpaid, and update pay and update job description based on 10 hours per week. I did a little bit of research, and a lot of nurses are getting paid more than what we're giving anyways. But a lot of towns that I called did voluntary work, and firefighters went over it also. So I was wondering, and I talked to Darlene yesterday about this. I mean, we could maybe look into, I talked to one town, they use a college to, instead of using that grant money or whatnot as the money, they use colleges. So like UMass goes to this town and every couple days and they get time off for their classes to do the blood pressures and all that
College
stuff.
credits, okay.
Yeah, they get college credits. So I was wondering around here, I talked to her about, what about Bridgewater, Massasoit?
Massasoit, yeah.
Yeah, and
The nurses program.
Yeah.
yeah, exactly. Everyone in a nurse program that needs the credits to do so. And maybe look at it that way to save some money from that. So she could fund some other things with that. So that we talked about that yesterday.
Do we know what's involved though with like getting that stood up, I guess, with the schools and everything? Or?
So I talked to the one town that actually does it, and she was like, actually, we just went there and had a conversation with them, and
Oh, really?
they were like, yeah, of course, that's good for the classes to be like, hey, we're gonna go out and actually do the stuff instead of on, hey, this is my partner for today, I'm gonna do his blood pressure 6 times, you know what I mean? I'm gonna go actually, you know what I mean?
Oh, it's a win-win, yeah.
Yeah, it's a win-win. So they also, 2 days a week or 3 days a week, the UMass would go there. And then 2 days a week, the fire department would stop by and check some every once in a while if they had some downtime and whatnot. It was like, it's a pretty good idea.
That's great.
There was another town that had volunteers that came in and checked it out, so.
So as an enhancement, we were talking about the fact that there was other options available, such as, looking at the colleges, Bridgewater University.
Oh, Darlene, do you mind going there, just so we can get it on video? Thank you.
Do we have a COA nurse?
Yeah, we have one right now, right?
What was that?
We have a nurse right now,
Yeah, it's 6 hours a week.
6 hours a week.
So it's being paid through the grant that we get through the state grant that we receive. So just looking at the other options, there are other, we could actually look at VNA. They offer that screening for diabetes as well as blood pressure checks. We also have the Board of Health nurse that does go to the Hendrich Hall and has, blood pressure checks here at the town hall as well. That's posted, that's been posted even for 2024, 2023, I think up to 2024. But anyway, so the other option was they offer wellness programs at the Y in East Bridgewater that they'll come out and do the screenings as well. We have to kind of fine tune it to some specific area because we have to have consistency. So we could utilize, the Board of Health nurse, and we could also utilize the the schools as well. But I'd like to kind of fine tune it to something that's more consistent rather than have all these different entities coming in. So I'm looking to, it would be a somewhat savings for us, and then we could utilize it in a market media person to do our newsletter and work on that piece of it. Because we do a lot of, I'm trying to cut down the time spent on an employee myself, which is, I don't need to be doing that newsletter to the point where I'll feed the information, but to actually do the publisher and all that stuff, it's always nice to have that market media person that's gonna get it right the first time and not spend, over time, a lot of money on that, to just doing, data entry stuff. So, so I think that's another thing to consider. But the nurse itself, the diabetes. The other thing too, I don't know if I want to bring this up, but we're just talking about the fact of liability for the town. We do keep we want to make sure that our records are kept safe. So therefore, the outside resources would have that capability of doing that. More so for the HIPAA violations that we could encounter. We are storing information in a database that isn't, let's just say, it's not up to par with regard to the way we should be keeping things. So I really have an issue with that, and it's always been something that I always wanted to change. So I think in all, it's going to be a saving grace for us in the long term. And then utilize the fire department to enhance if there's an issue with a resident that does come in. We've had residents that have come into the center with a high blood pressure and, then told to, check in with their doctors, but there's no follow-up. We're not a hospital. We're not a clinic either. We're screening. So we want to protect ourselves as a community, as a town. But keeping this information stored in a proper way is what I'm looking to do as well. So there's a lot of good reasons why we want to do something that's a little bit more stable.
So I'm looking at the bylaw and the COA grant, they call them COA grant positions. These two positions, the assistant outreach worker and the geriatric nurse.
It's not a geriatric nurse. It's some reason they have that labeled as such, but the person's not a geriatric nurse. Yeah.
That's what it says in the bylaw.
Right.
But is there, what is a grant position? Is there some, do these positions have some sort of grant funding or not?
Okay, so the position was, prior to myself coming on board, I guess they have utilized funding through the state. This grant, I don't know how it was created, but as of after the pandemic, they said they used to use the Green Guide according to the state. So the state would provide us with monies to run and operate a COA. And it's based on a census. So we were operating on a 2010 census, and now we just recently increased for $2,100. So it was $18,732. And of that $18,732 of the state grant, approximately $10,000 to $11,000 going to the nurse / and then she would do some outreach. So with that, that's a lot of money for a grant. When the grant isn't, it's only $18,732. This year it just went up to 25. I think I have it in my book here.
25,308.
Right, so if we did the grant now.
Yeah, you said 25,308.
Correct, yep. So the grant is based on the 2020 census, and yes, 25,308. So without that, we could utilize, and we're able to use that grant funds according to the state, and we don't have to go by the green book anymore, but we could utilize it to run our center the best way we can after the pandemic. So we could use it continue to use it to pay employees, but that's grant funds that we use to have programs and to run the center. So, I just want to make sure that if we have some options that are going to allow us to do the same thing, but at no cost, and to protect the individuals that walk through the door, especially when it comes to, a situation of medical issues or screenings, we want to keep that safe. So that position, those were created, I guess, I don't know how long ago it was. They started taking money out of the grant fund.
Actually, it says it was amended at this past town meeting.
To,
Just the amount was,
Huh?
just the amount was amended.
Just
Those two positions have been funded by the grant since before I started.
yeah, it's been a long time. It was probably back in I don't know,
I can imagine.
1900. No, it can't be that far back. It was a long time ago. It was
The assistant outreach worker, the one that you were started talking about like months ago?
correct. Yeah, the assistant.
She wanted to move that from 1611 to 18, which would be less than $1,000.
Right, so that is only 12 hours a week. And this person would be doing a lot of the SNAP applications, any of the applications having to do with fuel assistance, and the phone calls to the seniors in the community. And that way, if there is a real strong issue that's out there, they would be able to hand that off to an outreach person. Right now, it's myself, to actually contact the consumer to find out what other resources are available with an issue that they may have. And just having that outreach person in 12 hours a week has been a real positive thing, because we've already made about 200 phone calls to residents in the community. And that's only been almost 2 months, not even. That's pretty good. So that way there, we've touched base with a lot of individuals to see that we're out here, and, you know, we have resources for them if they're looking for a direction, depending on what the situation is, so.
Is the $25 for the nurse?
I was thinking more of like, let's look into getting the, you know, volunteer
I mean,
Well,
stuff as such,
well-
and then that saves the grant, and maybe
yeah, but
moves up,
assuming she hires a nurse,
which they already have one.
Oh.
so then the question becomes how, not how do we expand the service, but how much do we pay that person? And it seems to me that $25 an hour
be below.
is pretty short for a nurse.
Oh, it is. Well, it
And
depends.
6 hours, right, 6 hours
Correct. Yeah, I mean,
The hours are not something we're gonna, that's finance committee budgetary thing, right? I mean, whether you have 6 hours, 10 hours, 100 hours, I mean, they're gonna talk about the budget for that. The question that we're trying to address now, I think, is just the rate. And looking at all of these proposals, really, there's only those three places that a specific rate has been brought up as insufficient: the call medic, the nurse, and the assistant outreach, and they all have separate, they all have separate mention in the bylaw. So like what Todd was talking about, where we probably don't want to regrade anybody because of the grant and the possibility that we're going to have a better system. These specific ones, I think we should address, really. I mean, the call medic, we all agree is ridiculous, that price. But that, even at that price, that's more than a nurse. It seems to me that a nurse is worth at least what a call.
Yeah, and it's, I mean, $5, 6 hours, and you're talking very small dollars, so it's
around what, 20?
Yeah. I mean, I don't know what a nurse's wage is, but I know $25 an hour is a pretty inexpensive nurse.
Yeah. Well, that's why, you know, we brought up the call firefighter with the money. The only other two were mine that also have money, so might as well bring them up, you know?
So where did you come up with $25 for that nurse's?
well, they're looking at the rates that we're going by on the chart here, the grade U, unclassified. So it says here, geriatric nurse, $19.25, so $19.44.
That's the bylaw what it is now.
Right.
Your proposal is 25. Why
Well,
25?
well, because of the fact I know the person that is doing the position now, she would probably accept that. She hasn't had a raise for some time, because it was based on, you know, when we did have an increase. So, so she would be happy, I'm sure, to accept the $25 an hour at 6 hours a week. But again, it's a question of how we want to handle this too, because if we have access to other options, then that's an option. You know, I don't feel like, you know, we have to have that position in place.
Okay. How about the outreach worker? How'd you come up to 18? What'd you come up with $18 as your suggestion?
Based on other senior centers and the assistants. And yeah, she, it's only 12 hours a week. Some of them actually have a lot more hours than that, so.
Yeah, so so when we were on the nurse one, now that we're on the outreach one, I got a couple of those, and 18 is roughly around where everyone else is.
Okay. So I would like to make a suggestion that we agree with the wage. Again, we're not reclassifying anybody, we're just specifically talking about what that one position, which has a specific number in our bylaw, is. And I would say we should accept the $18 on the outreach worker. First of all, he's being paid at $16.11. That's like $1 over what you could make at Dunkin' Donuts. so. I
I mean,
think
18 at Chick-fil-A.
$18 is certainly reasonable. And then I think on the geriatric, well, Tim is not also the geriatric nurse, she's calling courtesy away nurse, I assume they're the same. But I think that position ought to be paid at least the same as the call medic. But I don't see why we would pay a nurse less than a paramedic, it seems crazy to me.
Yeah.
So I would recommend we recommend that one at $26. Just at least that's, I mean, that's why, that's the only thing I can think of. I'm sure if we went to put an ad in the newspaper to hire a nurse,
Yeah,
we're not going to anybody for $25. No, I can't imagine. So
No.
we can do that for this year, and then when the grant, you know, take a look at the whole process, but at least for now. I mean, at least she should be, I mean, $19 is.
But it sounds like we may not need that position, I guess?
So are we talking, so if the position, what did you say, EMT? But the only thing at the medic, I'm sorry, do they administer a needle or, you know, are they in that?
Oh, yeah.
Paramedics.
Okay, so they're really not comparison, we're not comparing the same thing. So basically, we're doing screenings, okay? So you're screening for blood pressure, you're screening for diabetes, period.
So you want to hold up?
So we're not talking, like, the average nurse today would probably make $35 to $40 an hour, maybe even more so, depending on their
We're talking
level.
about over 10 hours a week, it's $10 a week,
Yeah.
right? So, I mean, I just think, if you want us to stay at 25, I would be happy to do it, but I just think.
No, I mean, if it's 26, I mean, at that point, but I'm just saying, comparison-wise to a medic, you said it's not really the same.
No, I get it.
Yeah.
But I don't see how we hire a nurse for $18.
$19.45.
Whatever it is, you just know.
You're right, absolutely.
I mean, we
Yep.
probably couldn't hire a guy to cut the grass for that, you know, in this economy, really. So, 26, just.
Absolutely.
I'm just picking it out of the air because it seems to match, you know, those kinds of things. So that's what I would recommend.
Yeah.
Mike, don't argue with me, I'm giving you more than you asked for.
No, I think that's great. No, I'm just saying, you know, I'm just bringing up the fact that it's, you know,
I know the different roles.
okay. We're not doing any type of needles or anything like that. So, you know, I think that's great. It's perfect, I guess, for her. That would be wonderful.
It is important, I just want to note, we're not talking about the employee, we're talking about the position.
Correct.
So I know sometimes it can be hard to differentiate, but we want to make sure we're talking about the position, not the employee. Because employee X could be gone today or tomorrow, and we need to look at it, you know, from exactly.
Well, and that's a great point, because we may not need that position
Well, that's
long-term,
what-
right, once we
that's-
fill the.
Now that I brought up with the nurses, we might not need that position, so that $25 might not be.
But nonetheless, it's still probably the right thing to do, to move that to the
I agree.
right dollar.
Move it up to a certain
If and when
point
we
of
need
where
it.
John has just said.
Yep.
But if we're using the outside resources that we could use,
Right.
that defers that to
Exactly.
something else.
That goes past the scope of the wage and personnel. I mean, really, what
Yeah.
we're saying is,
Right.
if the position is going.
To be there.
If we're gonna use it.
If we're gonna use it.
Then we need to pay it at a certain rate.
And that's, I agree with that, John.
So we
Yeah,
stand 25?
Good point.
I say.
So-
I just don't, I don't know, it makes it easy to me.
Yeah, I mean.
If we're not gonna use it, it doesn't make any difference.
No,
anyway.
exactly. So, I mean, I don't, so now that I had two of the money ones, I mean, I believe they both should have went up, and I think you guys agree also.
You found, your research said that the assistant outreach.
The assistant outreach is where she wants it
And
is,
again, I mean, $18 is really short money for anybody with any sort of credential, much less a professional degree. I think.
exactly. So I think the 18 is definitely the right ballpark of where she brought it up, and I think the 25, or if we're gonna go to 26, is also good. I mean, nurse, again, like Cody said, we're talking about the position, not the person, so. We're gonna talk
Because we're
about-
talking about the person, it's only 26.
Yeah. So, I mean,
We're talking about the
those are
position.
the three that we're pretty much talking about tonight.
Okay, so let me just go back over what we've talked about. So we've gone over the police department. The records clerk position is a finance budgetary issue. If he wants to hire somebody at grade 4 or whatever, that's up to him. The PI we don't need, and the lieutenant, we're gonna work out on the thing. On the fire department, call medic, we agree on the number, 26. The COA nurse, the number 25. the assistant outreach person, the number 18. All of the rest of the regrading, we want to defer until we get some guidance on how that should be done.
Which is only 6 months, you said?
I mean,
I don't think that's
Do we
long
have
to wait for how long it's
if, assuming we had a reason to hold a special town meeting in the fall, and assuming we had this report done by then, is there any reason why we couldn't do wage and personnel changes then?
Yeah, you absolutely can.
So, I mean, we could, I mean, not unusual for us to have a fall town meeting, some things come up or whatever. Spring up. Spring up time like, not putting it off, and the worst we put off is hopefully have it all settled before next spring, not this spring, next spring.
I mean, that's. Anyone else have anything?
Yeah, I mean, anybody else have any other ideas? I mean, again, any of these requests that are talking about job description, that's what we're gonna study, and we can't.
Everything else is gonna be a study,
Yep, and then,
give or take though. We should the assistant. Ones that if they're already in our bylaws,
Yeah, right.
those are the only ones that would be
A budgetary request.
thing.
how about the, going back to the health agent, they wanted to change from a 1-year appointment to a 3-year. Can we, change that in the
How
bylaw?
do you define where that is? I can't see, I don't see it in
I
that
don't see it
personnel
either in the
bylaw.
bylaw.
So I'll talk to him. And I gotta see where all of the appointments are. I don't even know if they're in the bylaw.
I don't believe they're in the bylaw. I think it's, they might be in other parts of the bylaws, and I think that he's appointed by the Board of Health, which is an elected board. So maybe it's in their bylaws.
I'll take a
I'm not
look.
sure.
Yeah, I mean, yes, so we can look at those more of like a policy.
I mean, I think, again, I just think they should be at-will employees like everybody else.
I agree.
I think. I mean, unless, like you say, we need, which we can only do we can only contract with certain levels of employee. So I don't think these people, with these positions, would fit into those qualifications anyway, so. All right, anybody else have any other thoughts, ideas, suggestions? Do we want to do this by motion? We probably should. All right, and we do 2 separate ones because the bylaw doesn't, what's on that, hopefully we get that fixed next year too. All right, so as far as on the Board of Selectmen, I will make a motion that we recommend, well, I'll make a motion that we hold off on the police lieutenant, deputy chief recommendation until the executive, the town administrator can work out the detail better with the police chief. I'll recommend that we eliminate, I'll move that we recommend eliminating permanent intermittent officer from the bylaw. In addition to that motion, I'll also say that we should recommend that the call medic be increased to $26 an hour, and that the recycling, the COA nurse, which again, the bylaw talks about geriatric nurse, I'm thinking it's the same thing, but hoping the numbers are the same. But I would say that we would recommend $26 at that rate, and the assistant outreach recommend be $18 requested.
Can I just clarify one thing quick? That's, the nurse position is a registered nurse?
She is, but
Okay.
she's not geriatric.
Oh, yeah, that's fine.
So maybe you want to change the,
Geriatric where it came from.
so maybe you want to change the bylaw to just say it's registered nurse.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's not.
Instead of yeah.
it's a geriatric.
Geriatric works with senior citizens.
Yeah,
Yeah,
That's a specialty.
but if,
Yeah,
Okay,
that's what they call it, for geriatrics.
which makes sense for.
Yeah, you have to have a training, you have to have the training for that.
so the-
So-
It's like labor and delivery.
does she have
That
the
training.
training as a geriatric nurse?
She's been working in a position for a while. But that doesn't mean, you have to have that certification though. So, just like the labor and delivery or specialty, you have to have that specialty. I don't know where the word came from, but it seems totally different in terms of the way it's, you know, I mean, because she's at a senior center doesn't mean that she's geriatric nurse. But I'm just asking.
I would say, why don't we just leave the title as it is now, and that'll be part of the study also?
Yeah.
This is just a title, it doesn't have a job description with it.
Yeah.
And it doesn't, you know, it just says geriatric nurse, which is,
Well, if you-
In line with council on aging.
Soon.
if we're gonna take that step,
Use the word nurse, they don't use geriatric nurse.
it's in, that's what, I'm just calling, that's what it says.
Yeah.
But again, it's just a title. And I think if we're going to get job descriptions on anyway from these positions, that ought to be in there and maybe we can change it. That way we can, because right now, it doesn't say what the description is, doesn't say what the qualifications are. I mean, I guess I could be a geriatric nurse if I said so. I'm old.
Or you beat, that's one criteria.
Does he have the classes? A second. So should I second?
Yes.
All right, second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, so it's unanimous on our end.
Okay, I'd like to make a motion for the finance committee that we hold off on the police lieutenant increase until the town administrator can have further discussions with the police chief. I move that we eliminate the permanent interim officer position due to us no longer being part of the civil service. I make a motion that we also raise the pay rate of both the call medic and the COA nurse to $26 per hour. And lastly, I move that we increase the outreach wage to $18 an hour.
I second.
Second. All those in favor?
Okay, so those are our recommendations so far. I think from the discussion we had, we're probably not going to recommend any other grade changes, but we will be recommending a wage increase in general, but we're not ready to do that yet. So our next meeting is
March 8th.
March 8th, yeah, that's right.
March the 8th. So
And then the
we'll
22nd.
have- Do you think we'll be in a position to make that wage recommendation?
Screech.
We need to settle all of our union contracts before we can make that wage recommendation.
Okay. So maybe we should, what else do we have to talk about?
If there's anything else in the bylaw that if anyone sees that they'd like cleaned up right now, that's something that you could discuss.
Yeah, I would
But I
like
think-
to get the wage and personnel thing, but I think that's going to be part of it.
And there are a few things, I've looked at it, I spoke with our labor council, about it. There are a few things we could do in the interim to help clean it up a little bit. One of them just came up, like, hiring new employees. One of the issues we're having when we bring in new employees is our step one. If they have experience, then a lot of times our step one doesn't cut it. We need to bring them into the higher step. The way the bylaw is written now, it says anything above step one has to be approved by this group. That could be a challenge to get not only a meeting like this together, but yeah, it may not just be necessary. So things like that you can change to the town administrator's approval or designee, board of selectmen. There's small things like that's just an example that came up recently where we need to.
Do you want, if you have a list of those, do you want to publish a list to us
Yeah,
before the 8th and we'll discuss them on the 8th?
Yeah, that's a good idea.
That's a good idea. That makes that, I mean, I hate to, I love you guys, you're great. No sense in dragging you out on a snowy night again if we don't have to.
Been nice.
Snows in Massachusetts?
I gotta wash my truck.
Not this year.
The other thing you may want to consider is, you've, I think, a good decision, if we're going to let a professional come in. It may be wise if I draft a memorandum to the staff, and let them know that, all their requests were considered, but we're engaging with a professional to conduct a compensation and classification study.
That's an excellent idea, and I think the impetus for that, you could say, look, we just received this grant for a substantial amount of money. We feel very confident that with that money, we can address the entire bylaw, which is what our plan is to do, and give them a timeframe, which you think, we expect it to be resolved within the next, whatever you think, months.
We want it done professionally.
Yeah.
And when they,
Not saying
know
that
we're
we're-
listening to them,
Yeah, not saying that we're incompetent, but I'd rather have someone that does it for a living than.
Well, so that's my bellyache about this committee from the beginning. When I look at the bylaw, and it just says,
There's nothing, yeah.
all of us get
Yeah,
together and talk about it.
Right.
Well,
There's no framework.
What do I know?
Yeah,
I don't know
I mean-
any of this, and it doesn't, I think that's one of the issues that need to be addressed is, what is our human resources department going to look like?
Yes.
I mean, again, we have to get out of the
Make it
18th
easy.
century farmer,
Exactly.
right?
Yeah, and
Except for
that,
you.
Yeah,
Even the farm.
that will be something that they look at in the study, is recommendations for kind of just operational. So we got 2 grants, one's for compensation and classification study, and the other is to review our bylaw, personnel bylaw, and our kind of HR operations. So staffing models, policies, things like that.
Yeah, the best practices.
Yeah.
I mean, we can come up with great ideas, but we want the best practice, right, of,
We don't have them. I mean,
Yeah.
no one's ever developed them. We've
Yeah,
had,
right.
waging personnel.
We're still in the dirt cellar.
I mean, we're doing it the same way like you would if it was the 1700s, It's like, oh, well, let's get together and talk about what we should pay Harold to wash the windows or whatever. It's, it's
And that
the
is.
21st
yeah.
century, man.
That is one of the nice things about the compensation and classification study. They'll provide us with a tool. So, the idea is we basically have a fresh start. Everyone has been classified, but things are gonna come up on an annual basis, every once in a while. But we'll be provided with a tool that says, this is how we grade the positions, and if you need to regrade a position, this is how you should do it. And then it's not a bunch of people sitting around, well, we think it shouldn't, or it's not even me saying, well, I think they should. It's, here's the tool, this is the process we go through, and it's black or white. Either, yes, they should be grade X, or no, we looked at it, we graded it, and they should be where they're fairly compensated.
Yeah, we're much more prepared.
Right.
And the department head will be much more prepared to evaluate their employees that come to them.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah, I'm not sure we need to do this on an annual basis anyway. I mean, it seems like this is a continuing process,
It
right?
is.
I mean, whatever the processes we set up, we should be evaluating things as it's going along. Like, we haven't, this year, everybody we've hired, we have not brought in at the beginning step. I mean, those policemen we hired, everybody, they've all come in, they said, well, we can't get anybody to work for us at these rates, the same thing Darlene's been saying also. So, if that came, it doesn't make sense that we'd have to wait a whole year to reclassify something like that, if that's something that can be done, on an ongoing basis.
And so I think you answered this earlier, but I guess when we kick off the process with them, I guess we'll outline some particulars that we want them to look at, right? Like maybe like the stipend process, like what's the best practice for that, and
I can
some of
tell
these
you
things
what
that came up on the
they're
list.
gonna say. No stipends.
Okay.
Yep.
But we can ask them to consider it, but they will say no.
Yeah, I think it would just be good to close that loop so that way we can go back to the employees too and say, we had them look at it, this was, like, you know what I mean, it was particularly looked at for, that way we make sure we're covering what was submitted essentially, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of it's a policy decision, though, too. I think we want them to look at what should we compensate our employees. And then they're gonna, there's DPW, some of the stipends make sense for some of the licenses they may have, but they're gonna say, you shouldn't.
Yeah.
If it's required of your job,
Then you shouldn't have
then
a
you're
stipend.
paid for your job,
Accordingly.
your grade, whatever, because that's what's required of your position. So, we want to ask them specific questions. We also don't want to just provide them with, a list of kind of things just to do it, because then they're going to spend more time doing those things than the things we really need them to do. So, but we'll be a more.
Fair point.
The stipend thing, it sometimes works to our advantage because it doesn't go into a base pay. So depending on the circumstance, it makes a little bit of sense.
But we could always figure that out as
Yeah.
us, in the end, after they're done, be like, hey, if we have anything, you know what I mean, then we'll be like, all right, well, we're gonna do it.
Yeah, well, the town's gonna have to decide to agree to whatever. it
Yeah,
is.
exactly. once they do their study, and then we're like, all right, well, we still want to put in a stipend for having an extra license or whatnot.
If, you can see it sometimes, like you say, in a DPW thing, if it's.
But it's mandatory to have
If it
when you,
requires extra effort, if it's not necessarily required, like you can't drive a truck without a particular license. So why would we pay you extra to get that license? We'll pay to maintain it, we'll pay
well,
you
that would be like what the
cost,
stipend is.
but
Like,
that's.
we have to get it renewed every 2 years, let's say. I mean, it's your time, your money, you know?
Well, I mean, I assume we do, like if somebody has to maintain a certain credential to do the job, and they do it, and they get reimbursed for it. I mean, that's how normally it works, right?
Yep.
Yeah, we have that in place today, right? We have that in place today, right? to
I think so.
Yeah, okay.
So, but, I mean, why, to pay an extra, school teachers do that sometimes.
So, I get what you're saying on that, though.
Okay, do we need to take up anything else?
I think so.
All right, so I would move on this side of the aisle to adjourn.
Second.
All
All right.
See you next.
I move to adjourn the finance committee.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Cool.